This is Dr. Bonnie Comerford. She's a dear friend and an exceptional veterinarian.
Oh, thank you.
But more than anything, a really good human and a very compassionate human. And I think sometimes that's the stuff that matters. I know. We're both going to well up about it. Me having a past life of being, my ex-husband was an equine veterinarian, and watching firsthand some of the things that he went through, just even as a man being a veterinarian. And again, this isn't going to be a deep dive on a gender conversation, but I definitely have appreciated in my lifetime watching how the roles are treated differently. Male veterinarian, female veterinarian, veterinarian, however we want to title it, but just sometimes people suck, plainly. And I think for me, living that life and having such full exposure to it, from so many capacities, from the sales world to the breeding world to, lameness and soundness and, all of those different niches, and watching young vets come through and learn, and female vets and just all of it. Watching people through the process for me has always been fascinating. And I know my life journey of having people always second doubt or second question or this or that, where if it was a guy, it just wouldn't be questioned. And so with that, I think comes a lot of folds, right? Like how that affects us personally, how it affects us as women, how it affects us as business owners, how it affects us from a mental health perspective, how it affects us, how we want to grow and do, and all of those layers. And so I wanted to chat with you today, and thank you, because I'm very interested in your point of view, because you live it, you breathe it, and to have to be that call or that answer to somebody when it's not always the best news, because the good news is easy, right? And so when I know it's very hard on you and on any veterinarian when we can't always deliver the best news and we can't always fix everything, because we're fixers.
True.
I think a lot of women are fixers, right?
Yes.
And so just what is all of that for you? And I know it's a lot, but where we are.
I think it's a really important conversation, because in the last 5 years, the equine veterinary field has really gone into a crisis where young veterinarians graduating from school, 98% of them do not want to do equine. Yeah. So the 2% that come into equine veterinary practice, within 5 years, 50% of them leave to go to small animal medicine.
Why do you think?
So through the American Association of Equine Practitioners, we've formed a task force to answer that question. Yeah. Why is this happening? And it's really multifactorial, but I think it really boils down to quality of life. Yeah. Being an equine veterinarian for me is the best thing in the world. I absolutely love what I do, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it does come with some,
sacrifices and
choices. Yes, exactly. So with our horses, we work long hours. We have on-call duties. It's holidays, it's weekends, it's year-round, 365 days a year. So it leaves you with not always a lot of time for your personal life. Yeah. It's very demanding, and in particular at the racetrack, it's very competitive, it's very fast-paced, it's very stressful for everyone involved in the industry to make sure that these horses are as healthy as they can be, and everything that we can do in our power to make it as safe as we can for them. And really making the wrong choice could be catastrophic. And so it's important to make the right choice and the right decision. So I think, a big part of the piece of the puzzle is your quality of life and the ability to have personal time.
Boundaries.
And setting boundaries.
Boundaries is hard.
Yeah. As equine vets, everyone has our cell phone number.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a little bit unique in the racetrack because we see the same clients every single day. Whereas, you know, in small animal, you bring your dog in once or twice a year for an appointment. And so you develop a level of comfort with your clients, which can sometimes blur the line and boundaries get broken or crossed. But setting boundaries is definitely important.
There's no work-life balance, I think. Like, it's hard.
That's
something that I have
really
to apply myself to, because I enjoy working and I know you enjoy working. So I think finding that work-life balance is really challenging.
It's very challenging. Yes, absolutely. And I still am trying to figure that out.
I always say I'm really crappy at it, but I'm trying.
It's difficult. I think another aspect is what we call compassion fatigue within the profession. Veterinarians tend to be perfectionists, and you can become frustrated and upset when you can't save every patient or solve every medical condition.
Absolutely.
And it's a profession that requires constant empathy and compassion all of the time. And so we're probably our own worst critics, and we definitely take things home with us and, you know, wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that sick horse and how it's doing and what else can you be doing to help it. And along with that, financial constraints can often be very stressful. You know, it will limit us from doing absolutely everything we can in the best interest of the animal. And that you take that home with you as well. That has an impact on you.
For sure. And I think it's hard too, like in a healthy, air quote, relationship with your partner or with whatever, you look for someone to give you those emotional deposits in your bank account, your emotional bank account, and a profession that takes so much emotion and compassion, and you're always giving that to the animal and to the humans. If we don't find those people to help fill that cup and that bank account, then all of a sudden we're overdrawn.
Yes,
and
100%.
And that's a really hard thing. And I think men go through it too, though. I don't think this is just unique to us ladies.
I would agree.
I think, and it's, they may try and brush it off a little bit more, but we've touched on before, and if you're comfortable talking about this, there's been conversation and a lot of statistics about mental health for veterinarians and suicide and all of what comes with that. Are you comfortable talking about that conversation?
I am, yes.
What does all of that mean to you? I know we've talked a ton about, jockey protocol now, concussion protocol, and making sure, in the NFL with what they've leaned into, because, how that mental health crisis, and there is a crisis, I think, in the NFL with retiring players that have gone through so much, brain fatigue through concussion. But what do you feel are some of those contributing things in this world? Is it that cup that's empty and not being replenished? What do you feel are some of those pieces?
That's definitely a part of it, the compassion fatigue. And mental health issues are not new within the profession. Sure. But there's so long been a culture of put your head down and work.
Soldier on.
Within the profession, that it was never talked about. And really in the last 5 years or so, it's changing for the better, for sure. There's a large scale study that found that female veterinarians were 3.5 times more likely, and male veterinarians were 2.5 times more likely, respectively, than the general public to die from suicide. It's a big number. There's a tremendous amount of student loan debt that individuals incur through their veterinary schooling, and there's a big disparage between the amount of student loan debt and the starting salaries for veterinarians. I think people erroneously assume that veterinarians make a lot of money, and they don't. So that's very stressful for people, especially as a young person, just entering into the workforce, having a tremendous loan debt over your head. And like we talked about, the hours and the lifestyle can be very demanding. The compassion fatigue, it's for real.
What do you feel veterinary medicine was a huge interest of mine when I was younger, and I ended up obviously shifting away from it as I got older. But I am aware of kind of the schooling and stuff that goes into being a veterinarian, through your different years of schooling. And I think one thing we've talked about previously is we don't do enough to teach veterinarians and doctors, but we're in this vein right now, enough about business. And then
absolutely,
part B to that is we also don't teach anything about the mental health part and the self-care part. So I know that, by the time you guys get to really focus in on your specialty, your last year basically, before you're kind of picking your lane,
your journey
through veterinary medicine at that point. What are some of the thoughts that you feel that through the educational process, even if it's a semester of this or a semester of that, would be like the most forward thinking and pay it forward, either education, exposure, or to help round out that veterinarian that is now stepping into this role?
So that's a really great point. And actually, veterinary school curriculums in the last 5 to 10 years have certainly started incorporating business classes in, which is so important because so many of us become small business owners and nobody ever taught you the basic principles of running a business. And so business education has become kind of part of the veterinary curriculum. And in very recent years now, there's a lot of options for students to get counseling for any type of mental health issue that they may have ongoing through the AAP and through a lot of the schools of veterinary medicine themselves. So I think we're doing a really good job and we're making a big forward push. So it's encouraging. And it's now when you talk to kids coming out of school, they really demand that they get their personal time and their quality of life. And I think that's great. I think it's amazing. It's been a long time coming and a very slow change, but I see it happening.
That's awesome.
So it's very exciting.
That's awesome. One thing we've been able to do together, which was so important for both of us, was we've both had a big part in aftercare.
Yes.
And everyone really knows a lot of my story with regards to aftercare. But one of the things that we're really talking a lot more about too lately is, I brought this point up a little bit more in the last couple weeks, that when we import warm bloods this horse is being imported to be a dressage horse. This specific one's importing to be a jumper. And then they start working with these horses and all of a sudden it's not that fancy of a dressage horse anymore. And they're like, maybe let's go try it in the hunter jumper world. Oh, it's so cute. Now it's a hunter. Yay.
Sure.
And now it's this big, 6-figure hunter. And I'm starting to liken this a little bit to the thoroughbreds, where their intended purpose is to race.
Right.
But it didn't pan out. And for us in the thoroughbred world, it's like the sad story of aftercare and, they didn't make it as a racehorse. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between that warm blood that was intended to do this job and this thoroughbred that was intended to do that job? All we're doing is we're just pivoting. And yes, some of them might come with an injury or a rehabbed injury or whatnot, but it's also the same conversation on the warm bloods, that maybe that dressage horse just had this or that niggling it, that it didn't need to do that next level dressage work or whatever discipline. I don't want to, drill down on dressage land, but how do you feel we're doing and what can we do better, and educating people and teaching people about injuries and what they mean? And as you saw when we were so heavily involved with it before, if a horse had hardware, meaning they had a screw or something fixing a prior injury, a fracture repair, thank you, people would, it can't, where really that joint is probably the strongest joint in the entire body of the horse. So how do we continue to tell that story in a way that we were both very passionate about? They're not victims. They're not rescues. We're celebrating these to I started to use the term of next care instead of aftercare. It's just the next part.
Right. I really like that phrase. That's great.
It's just the next part of what we're doing for them. And they really care for us probably more than we care for them.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of common misconceptions about thoroughbred racehorses being retired from the racetrack. And being heavily involved in the aftercare, I've seen firsthand what these horses are capable of when they're finished from racing and finding a second career. They can really do anything. And with the right amount of rehabilitation and time, if they do have an injury when they're retired, they can do so much. So, I think it's continuing to have those conversations and the dialogue. Obviously, the Retired Racehorse Project, things like that are great for the breed and promoting them and what they can do after their retirement from racing. But I would always encourage people who are interested in adopting or purchasing a retired thoroughbred to work closely with your veterinarian and to get their opinion on what they think this horse will be capable of for its future intended use. And I think it's also important to not overstate what we expect from these horses moving forward, because that's probably the quickest way to land them in a bad spot. I wanted it as a jumper and it can't jump, so now I'm going to get rid of it. So I think it's important to just keep having the discussions and celebrating the success stories and highlighting them as best we can. And as an industry, I think we can do better. I think there's a lot of room for us to be able to promote retired racehorses and their responsible transition into their next careers. We have so many big televised events where for, that hour or 2 hours on that day, the world's attention is on the thoroughbred and racing. And if we can have some more video clips and segments that we can insert during those times, people love feel-good stories.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, so it would be an easy sell for us.
And so many of them aren't exceptions, right? Like sometimes we see the clips and this and that, it's like, oh, it's the exception that this horse did this, and it's, this horse like beat the odds to go do this, but it's really like so much of the
normal, the standard,
that they're just going on and having a really cool life doing. I mean, I don't know if you saw, I put up a couple weeks ago, Jementier.
Oh no, I didn't.
He was tootling around with like a little 9-year-old jumping, and I got the pictures, and I was like, waterworks for me straight away, just because he was such a cool horse. But I think there's so much of that is just the norm now, continuing to tell the story, and and I wasn't shy. I mean, he had a high suspensory tweak that was limited him and from being a high speed performance horse, but tootling around a little ring, jumping 2 feet.
It's right up his alley.
Oh, totally.
For sure.
And he wasn't spooking at anything.
No. That's great.
Is there anything that you would like to put out into the orb or make people more aware of, or heightened awareness of our world or veterinary world, or something that you think is important?
I do. Well, I would certainly encourage anyone who has an interest in becoming an equine veterinarian.
I love that.
Regardless if they want to do racetrack work or not, to reach out and ride along with us. I find once I get students in my truck and going around seeing what I do every day, they love it. They really do. And a lot of them say, I didn't think I was going to like this. But there's a lot of misconceptions about the racetrack in general, and certainly about the veterinary medicine side of it. Veterinarians become veterinarians because they love animals and they want to help them. And it's no different being a racetrack vet. I love the horses, and it's such a joy to be able to take care of them and be around them. And I feel very responsible to be a steward for their safety and a voice for them because they can't advocate for themselves. And there was a time in my career when I was heavily involved in the aftercare, and I started to get a little disheartened seeing some of the injuries that these horses were being retired with. And it really made me question the industry and why I'm a part of it. But at the end of the day, I honestly believe these horses are taken such amazing care of. And I always want to be here to be a part of making sure that that continues to be the norm.
I think my growth through that, and that's a great point of view, and I appreciate you saying that. I've always said my job is to steward the best possible outcomes for who comes through our hands. And I think going through the extensiveness that we went through with aftercare and seeing some of those injuries and how they were managed or mismanaged was very eye-opening in a lot of regards, and I think helps make us better stewards in what we do from those life experiences. And so it's great to hear, selfishly and personally, that it had that kind of impact for you too.
It did. It ended up being a very positive impact in the end. I just had to redirect the way my brain was interpreting the information.
And it's easy to do that, right? Like, that's what everyone tells us we're supposed to look at it that way. So it's so easy to, everyone's, but I agree with you. It's the point of view, and elevating it and making it for good. It's easy to be negative.
It is. And I think the industry has come a long way in terms of their thinking about retirement too, all in a positive shift.
Yeah.
And I really see a big difference and the responsibility of people recognizing when the horse is not thriving at being
Sure.
a racehorse any longer,
Yeah.
and making that decision to transition it on to its second home and second career.
No, I agree.
So that's really encouraging.
I love your idea though about if people want to have an interest in veterinary medicine, you know, get in the truck and go
Yes.
go feel it, put it on, wear it, and see what it is before you say no to it. It's a great idea.
100%.
But a bird pooped on me.
No, that happened to me yesterday.
Yeah, that was you.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for
appreciate your
having
time.
me.
It was
Yes,
fun.
it was.